Well, Southwest Airlines has had another close call after an apparent string of close calls in recent months. This time on July 14th, an aircraft came close to inadvertently ditching into a portion of Tampa Bay while on approach to the Tampa International Airport. It's difficult to directly compare all of the recent incidents, but this one might arguably be the worst one yet. Flight 425 flies from Columbus, Ohio to Tampa, Florida on weekends with a scheduled departure time of 4 p.m. and an arrival time of 6:10 p.m. On Sunday, July 14th, this flight was operated by a Boeing 737 MAX 8. Despite pushing back from the gate 4 minutes behind schedule, the flight took off and departed Columbus without further delay. About 3/4 of the way through the flight, the aircraft entered a holding pattern. Poor weather with ample thunderstorms covered a large portion of central Florida. Bad weather tends to create a backlog of air traffic, with arrivals experiencing a reverse domino effect, requiring aircraft to hold further and further up the chain. After spending 45 minutes flying in circles, Southwest 425 exited the hold at 6:27 p.m. or 22:27 Zulu time and turned toward Tampa. Around 6:50 p.m. or 22:50 Zulu, the aircraft descended below 18,000 feet, and shortly thereafter, the center controller handed the aircraft over to Tampa Approach Control.
3014 copy, Southwest 425 with Delta. Alright, we'll do. 210, 6000, Southwest 425. And approach Southwest 425. Any way to swing to the right over Blount? Looks like some, we're painting some good stuff there. 180, thank you, Southwest 425. Slow to 210, then down to 6. Got you, 425, and 180 on the heading, thank you. 260 on the heading, Southwest 425. Left 220, South 425. Six 7180 on the heading, South 425. 140 on the heading, down to 6, Southwest 425. 110 on the heading, Southwest 425. 5,000, 25-3, Southwest 425.
At this point, the aircraft was instructed to change to a radio frequency for a different Tampa Approach Controller. However, I was unable to locate an audio recording of that frequency. Most likely, the pilots were instructed to fly directly to Pulvey, an initial and intermediate fix on the RNAV 10 approach, and to execute the RNAV approach, as this was the only instrument approach available for runway 10. Along the way, it's possible the pilots may have been offered and accepted a visual approach if they reported the airport in sight, although previous aircraft did report moderate rain along the same approach path. The gold standard instrument approach is the ILS, which features radio signals to guide aircraft horizontally and vertically to the runway. In contrast, RNAV approaches use GPS to track the aircraft's position in relation to the approach course and specific waypoints. In most cases, the aircraft's flight management system will also compute an artificial glide slope referred to as a glide path. After being cleared for the approach, Southwest 425 checked in with the Tampa Control Tower.
Hey, Tower, South 425. We're with you for 10.
South 425, Tampa Tower, reported gain of loss 10 knots on final bumpy ride, and continue for runway 10.
Continuing for 10, we got you, Southwest 425, thank you.
Roger, in the wind 120, 12, gust 20. Southwest 425, runway 10, clear to land.
10, clear to land, thank you, South 425.
And Southwest 425, low altitude alert, check your altitude, Tampa's altimeter 3014.
3014, thank you, Southwest 425.
And Southwest 425, you plan to go around?
Yeah, we are. We have to go southwest 425.
South 425, Roger, cancel approach clearance. Go around runway 10 for now. You can fly runway heading and climb and maintain 1,600.
1,600. We're going around southwest 425.
Southwest 425, fly your present heading and climb and maintain 3,000.
I maintain 3,000, that was 425.
Southwest 425, you can contact departure 119er Point Manor.
929, that was 425. With your 3,000.
Southwest 425, Tampa, thanks, and reason for the go around?
We want to pick up the airport there for a little bit, and when we get it, do you mind?
Southwest 425, what's your request then now?
Yeah, it looks like we need to divert over to Fort Lauderdale.
425, clear to Fort Lauderdale via radar back there, fly heading 130, climb and maintain 12,000 now.
130, and up to 12,000, southwest 425. 425, you said the 130,000?
12,000 on the 130 heading, that's the 425.
12000 on the 130 heading, thank you, 425.
Thanks for checking. Southwest 425, connect Miami Center 127.2.
27.2 for southwest 425.
Yeah.
The aircraft proceeded to Fort Lauderdale and landed uneventfully. My guess is that, with the 45-minute holding pattern and the missed approach, they were tight on fuel and determined that diverting was the safest option. When weather is less than ideal, regulations require flights to list an alternate airport on their flight plan and carry enough extra fuel to be able to fly from the destination to the alternate. A second approach attempt at Tampa could have eaten into the alternate fuel bucket, something pilots will generally try to avoid. It looks like those on board came dangerously close to going for an inopportune swim. This obviously should not have happened, but we can imagine several ways how it might have. Before continuing, it should be noted that the reported altitudes are from ADS-B flight tracking sites and can be inaccurate. ADS-B transmits both GPS-derived and barometric altitude relative to standard pressure called pressure altitude. Both of these have inherent inaccuracies that have to be accounted for. Above 18,000 feet, pilots always fly with reference to pressure altitude rather than constantly adjusting that altimeter setting for variations in actual pressure. It appears the ADS-B information reported for this flight is pressure altitude rather than GPS altitude, since data show precise cardinal altitudes being maintained during cruise above 18,000. With Tampa's altimeter setting of 3014, pressure altitude would have been 220 feet less than the actual barometric altitude. Tracking information from Southwest Flight 1256, which flew the same approach a few minutes earlier, seems to corroborate this. This means Southwest 425's reported bottom altitude of 150 feet over Tampa Bay would have actually been closer to 370 feet. Of course, this would still mean the aircraft was mind-bogglingly low and far below the minimum altitude for the area. Again, it's not currently known whether Southwest 425 was cleared for a visual approach or an RNAV approach. Even if cleared for a visual, it is standard practice to set up the instrument approach to aid in situational awareness. This has the added advantage of preventing other embarrassing and potentially dangerous mishaps. The pilots of this flight almost surely loaded the RNAV 10 approach into the aircraft's flight management system. The weather was questionable, they were probably asked to navigate directly to Pulvey, the initial approach fix, and the aircraft precisely followed the approach's horizontal guidance. Until reaching Pulvey, aircraft must maintain at least 2,000 feet, which this flight did by a healthy margin. After Pulvey, aircraft must maintain at least 1,600 feet until the final approach fix, Zexy. However, after Pulvey, Southwest 425 descended steadily, continuing right through 1,600 feet several miles before Zexy, and continued descending until a few hundred feet above the ground. Even with the correction from pressure altitude to actual altitude discussed earlier, it still appears they crossed Zexi at least 1,000 feet too low, a massive error. For whatever reason, this crew lost situational awareness. Perhaps they felt rushed and mistakenly believed that Palvi was the final approach fix. They may have been under the false impression that they were getting behind and were too high, as they did cross Palvi at least 500 feet above the minimum. However, there's also plenty of distance between Palvi and Zexi to lose excess altitude, so they weren't actually high and there was no need to rush the descent. Maybe they deleted Zexi from the flight plan either inadvertently or because they thought it was a step-down fix unnecessary for a visual approach. Maybe they set up the aircraft's mode control panel incorrectly. Or maybe they mistook the causeway for the runway and disregarded electronic guidance. Such mistakes could have stemmed from fatigue. It was an evening flight and they were arriving an hour behind schedule. It's possible that the crew awoke early in the morning and had already performed several flights before departing Columbus. The lengthy holding pattern not only represented a time delay but also increased workload. During the hold, they would have been busy with fuel calculations, communication with the company dispatch office, keeping the cabin advised, and other tasks. Another explanation might be simple complacency when performing visual approaches. Just recently, another Southwest flight received a low-altitude alert approaching Oklahoma City. They were also attempting a visual approach to a runway whose only instrument approach was an RNAV approach. Maybe there is something wrong with the culture at Southwest Airlines such that pilots do not cross-check their positions adequately when performing visual approaches. Or perhaps Southwest does not adequately train pilots on RNAV procedures. RNAV approach procedures have more quirks than ILS approaches. RNAV systems can be more complex to set up and more prone to error. For example, inadvertently removing a waypoint or changing an altitude in the flight plan could result in incorrect or absent glide path information. After exploring likely explanations, let's consider some that are not as likely. There is no evidence that this event may have been a result of a wind shear or microburst encounter. The aircraft flew a smooth, steady descent from the initial approach fix and never stopped descending until the altitude alert. Low-level wind shear resulting in a 1,000-foot loss would warrant immediate and aggressive action by the flight crew, and they would have reported the incident to ATC once the aircraft was under control. A wind shear event would also mandate a go-around, but it seems the flight crew took no decisive action on this front either until prompted by ATC. A theory of a wrong altimeter setting also looks to be incorrect. The flight crew obtained the Tampa altimeter setting at least 2 times, first when they received the ATIS information Delta, and second when they read back 3014 upon checking in with Tampa Approach Control. Finally, there is nothing unusual or tricky about the RNAV 10 approach to Tampa. The chart depicts a typical approach that can only be described as ordinary. That said, admittedly, the causeway's location along the approach path is suspect, and the lack of an approach lighting system for that runway doesn't help. This is only the latest in a string of concerning safety events, not just for Southwest but the entire industry. This trend could stem from the large numbers of new pilots that have come online in recent years as the post-pandemic surge in travel demand combined with increased retirements led to record hiring. In order to hire adequate numbers of pilots, airlines reduced flight time and education requirements, and it seems like many of today's pilots are ending up at airlines while missing basic skills. Those who are familiar with ill-fated YouTuber Tennessee Flygirl may have seen footage calling into question the competence of some of her flight instructors as seen in videos like this one.
November 58901 Juliet, check out to the minute immediately. We're showing 1,500.
Roger that, looking, nano jet. Ignite the power there.
November 58901 Juliet, cancel approach clearance, turn right head, climb maintain 2,500, turn right heading 130.
Right heading 150 up to 3,500, nano Juliet. Alright, full power. Hey, I guess he saw that we were too low or something. Full power for me.
Yep, it's full power.
Yeah, and then let's go right, turn right heading on 150.
November 91 Juliet, do you require any assistance?
No, we're doing some IFR instrument practice for rating. We may have missed a little point there, but we didn't see anything. No issues here.
November 91 Juliet, we're showing you about 900 feet below the crossing altitude from Aldi.
This instructor allowed a glaring error to take place, flying well below a minimum altitude on an instrument approach, an incident not unlike Southwest 425. He became employed by an airline only a few months after this video was recorded. Starting in the early 2000s, airlines stopped giving applicants simulator evaluations during the interview process. HR-based interviews oriented around personality assessment replaced skill evaluation. Economic conditions, the controversial ATP rule, and an increase in the pilot retirement age kept hiring slow throughout the 2000s and 2010s, which may have camouflaged negative effects of the changes in hiring practices. Though airline management may believe that a lack of fundamental skills would be corrected during the training process, the reality is that airline training is not designed for that. Today's aircraft are also more complex. Airlines may be undertraining their pilots in all of the quirks and gotchas that are present in modern automation systems. Commercial aviation in the U.S. has enjoyed an amazing safety record through most of the 21st century, but this fact may have lulled the industry into a false sense of security, which could abruptly end the safety streak. This and the other recent incidents should serve as a wake-up call.